So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I repot my succulents. I'm going to be sharing why I repot them, when you need to, any care tips and any tools that I use as well. So this is the succulent that we're going to repot today. It's getting quite big for this pot, so I'm just going to share with you why I'm repotting it and obviously the process of how to do so. Succulents actually don't mind being pot bound sometimes, so it's not always necessary to repot them all the time. It's just that I'm not always that good with mine and I don't repot them every year. This one has actually probably been in this pot a couple of years now, so it's definitely time for it to have some fresh soil, kind of stretch its legs, and yeah, I would like to put it into one of the white pots. So like I say, this is the succulent we're going to look at today. Firstly, I would just remove it from the pot. Obviously, if it is quite pot bound, it will be quite hard to do so. So it might be worth getting a sharp tool, maybe a skewer or something, just to get down the sides and kind of loosen the roots, which are obviously growing against the pot there. It can be quite challenging, so you have to be quite aggressive sometimes, but just obviously be gentle with the roots where possible. And then this skewer also got a pointy tip, but then it's got this little end, so I find this really helpful for a lot of my plants and lots of things I do in the greenhouse. I'm just pushing gently up there, so yeah, that's now kind of come loose, and there we are. You can see that the roots have kind of grown to the very outskirts of the pot and kind of have no more room. They've probably used all the nutrients from the soil. Yeah, and just everything's very depleted. It is winter here at the moment, so I haven't watered this since probably autumn. So yeah, it's not had any water for months and months and months now. But yeah, it could do with some new soil, a little bit of TLC, and it's just a really good time to check for any root rot or any pests, and just kind of a health check on the plant as well. Another tool which is kind of a must for me is one of these little, what are they called, like a rake? It's just a mini one. I got this off Temu for about £6 with like loads of other bits and bobs, so it's just really handy to obviously get in there, because these roots are really strong and really firm in there. There's not a lot of give at all. So what we're going to do is get rid of a lot of these roots on the outside. If your plant had been repotted probably within the last year and the roots are all quite white on the outside and quite fresh, then you don't necessarily have to remove any old soil. You can leave that on and then just repot into some fresh soil, so those roots would then grow into the fresh soil. But because this one's been here for, like I say, a couple of years now, I think it's time to get rid of some of these old roots. It would really do it some good to have a trim, get rid of some old ones, and then yeah, let it have a new pot and some fresh soil. So I'm just going to take my handy little device and kind of just hack away, like I say, quite gently. You don't have to be too rough with it unless it's very pot bound. Yeah, these come away quite easily, and I've actually got some perlite in here which I haven't used for a long time, so it does show that it's been years since I've done this. But yes, this soil is really, there's nothing left in this, no nutrients for it, so it's definitely going to do it a world of good having some fresh soil. So we just need to remove all that. It kind of comes away in clumps when the roots are so old as well. And don't worry about being rough with it. It will grow new roots. You can see some new ones growing around here as well. These are all the white fresh new ones. So that is all the soil removed. You don't necessarily need to remove it all. It just kind of, this stuff is just so old, so I think it needed to come off, and just come off really easily. So yeah, it just depends on how long you've had your succulent in that soil for. But yeah, I'll just get rid of this now. This needs to go in the bin, and we're going to do a new fresh mixture for this lovely plant. So choosing the right soil is very important. I use a 50% mixture of compost with 50% grit, so I just make sure there's a perfect 50% ratio there, and that just ensures that the soil is going to be nice and well draining. Obviously just give it a really good mix about. Like I said, this just makes sure that the soil is very well draining, and you water the plant, you want to make sure the water is coming out of the bottom really quickly and not sitting in the soil, because that is what will lead to your succulent rotting. So once you have mixture of soil together, you need to choose a pot. So this one I could repot back into this pot. It's not too bad, it's kind of slightly bigger than the pot. So I would choose one which is just a little bit bigger. Don't go too big because then you have too much soil, and like I say, if you've got wet soil, that will retain a lot of moisture and that can lead to obviously rotting the plants. So yeah, don't go too big with any pots. You always want to size up very slowly. This one actually doesn't look hugely bigger, but it's quite a lot of depth to this pot, so I think this will work really well in that pot. So what I've done is just put some fresh soil at the bottom there, and then just place the plant in the pot and then just fill around the roots and just make sure the kind of root ball is sitting just level with the pot, so it's not too sunken in there, because that will obviously suffocate the plant a little bit. You need to have it sitting so it's quite nicely out of the top of the plant. I'm actually going to use my little baby scoop here, which is very cute and very handy to get around the edges. So we're just going to fill around the pot here with the new soil and just obviously move the leaves. If you've got a plant or a succulent with a lot of farina, which is the coating on these leaves, you just need to be careful of how you're touching them. If you don't mind having prints on your leaves, then that's fine, but I'm a bit funny about mine, so I try and kind of touch them underneath rather than on top, and that will prevent any marks and fingerprints and things on your plants. Sometimes, you know, it's completely impossible to do so if you've got like a, I don't know, like a lowie or something which is really heavily coated in farina. But yeah, it's always worth just trying to be careful anyway, so you don't touch that too much. And just make sure the leaves are out, and I would just kind of pat it down a little bit, not too firm, because we need to make sure there's lots of air getting into the soil. That's really important as well. But just pat it down so it's kind of getting down into the nooks and crannies that we need it to. And then obviously we want it to be in the center, so just be careful where it's sitting, and if you need to move it about, you can obviously prod around and do so, but I'm happy with that. That looks really good. So like I said, this pot is a little bit deeper than the other one and there's a little bit more room, so it'll just give it that extra chance to grow and stretch its legs and, you know, grow some new roots. And obviously the soil's going to have a lot more nutrients in than it was getting before in that old soil that was in there. Once you've repotted a plant, I would not water it, probably around a week, maybe 2 weeks. As the roots have been disturbed, it's just better to avoid watering for a week or so, just to let the plant kind of settle in and let the roots callus over, and yeah, then you can water away. This one is not going to be watered for another month or so anyway, just because of the season. You can obviously add a top dressing to your plants. One of mine has got a top dressing and I really do like it, but it's just such a huge job, and I'm a bit funny with mine. They have to be all the same and I don't have enough to do all of them, so this one has got some top dressing which I just think looks so nice. So you can add that on. There are different kind of opinions on it. Some people say that having a top dressing doesn't allow the soil to dry out so quickly between watering, which is obviously very important for succulents. I presume that's because the sun cannot penetrate below the gravel that you're putting on. So yeah, sometimes it's better to keep that off, but it's just preference really, and it's just what works for you. I used to do it on all of mine, but the last couple of years I haven't done it as much, and I haven't found a major difference either way really. If you want to add a fertilizer to your succulents, obviously you can add that to the soil. Something I use is this, the cactus and succulent focus feed is really good. I probably use this once every other month throughout the growing season, and it really plumps up the succulents. It makes such a difference. So this is really good, and it means you don't have to put anything in the soil. You can just water with this. You add a teaspoon per litre, I think, of water, and it's brilliant. It really is noticeable how much difference it makes in your plants. So repotting is a really easy process. Obviously, if you've got hundreds of plants, it can be very time consuming, so you don't have to do it every year, but it is beneficial to the plant to get that new nutrients, and it's good to have a look at the roots and just see what the health of the plant is like. Obviously the soil you use is really important, the size of the pot is important. Like I say, if it's too big for the plant, it can lead to rotting, so just be very careful in choosing what size pot is right for your plant. I've used terracotta and plastic over the years, and I haven't found a massive difference apart from the time it takes for the soil to dry out between waterings. So if it's a terracotta pot, they're quite porous, so I think the water evaporates a lot quicker in those than it would in a plastic pot. So that's worth knowing, and it obviously depends on where you're based to kind of what you need for your drainage and how quickly you need your soil to dry out between waterings. And lastly, I used to think that you could only repot in the growing season, but you can't. You can actually repot all year round. So yeah, it's good to know, and it's something to do in winter when your succulents are dormant, if that's what happens where you're located. Yeah, it's just you can repot them all year round. Just obviously be careful not to get any moisture onto the roots, and don't water them in the winter period. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope something that I've shown you has been of benefit to you and you can use this in your collection. If you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love you to subscribe to my channel. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.